Good afternoon. Sorry to interrupt you all because I know what an amazing networking moment this is and great to see so many friends and familiar faces out here. We have the most intimidating panel I think I've ever met and just wonderful, inspirational people to tell you all about their incredible pathways on the pitch. But before I introduce you to everyone, I'd just like to get a show of hands. How many people have done the Women in Football Barclays sponsored leadership course here? Oh. How many people are thinking about doing it? All right, let's see what that's like after this. And how many people are thinking about going in a different direction in football or taking a direction in football but a little apprehensive about it? Oh, great. Maybe even considering it but aren't brave enough to take it? Okay, one. Let's see if we can change that. So, first of all, I'd like to introduce you to these brilliant women. I can't do it quickly because their careers are completely astounding. I'm going to start with Janie Frampton, OBE, who on Thursday on our Zoom call was fixing a puncture. But the day before, she was at Windsor getting her OBE. She started before her career, before her biography on your app, by taking her coaching badges, by organising coaching sessions for women across her county when women's football simply wasn't being encouraged, then took her officiating badges and went on to be only the second woman in English football to officiate a men's game before being a leading light for FIFA on training women in officiating. She now runs a consultancy and leadership programme to advise on leadership and pathways within the industry and is an absolute inspiration to us all. Now to my left is Mirka. She's the head of women's football at the Czech Republic's FA. If we're going to be official, it's now called Czechia, and has been on an amazing pathway from being the PA to the chairman, I believe, of Slavia Prague, to then going on to falling in love with the women's game, becoming a women's team manager, then going on to be working men's football, going into sports marketing, and then going to the FA to run the women's first division. Extraordinary career. I'd love to come over now as well to Lola, who is the head of women's football at Burnley. She's come down here for the sunshine, and today we are deserving of her presence. We're going to talk about that a little bit later, but she is a prime example of why your life can change right here today. Wait for it. And over to Kirsty, also a leading light, working as official for the PGMOL, working on the Women's League Cup final and the FA Cup final, and has been getting a standing ovation down on the South Coast, and we'll talk about that a little later. But first of all, I want to go to Janie and that day at Windsor Castle. Tell us what that meant to you, and you also picked up your award by probably the greatest leading example of women in sport in the monarchy.
Yes, thank you. So I was told in November that I was to receive an OBE from the King, and I just sat and cried. That's all I could do, because you can't tell anybody. So you have to keep it quiet. So all I could do is sit and cry. And then for the next 6 weeks before it could be announced, I had massive imposter syndrome, thinking, well, there's people out there that have done amazing things, and why on earth have I been awarded an OBE? And then the reality kicks in, I guess, and you start to really reflect on what you've done. And when my county, spoke to me and did an interview about what I did in those early days, when I would run football in my town on a Saturday morning, I'd rush home, I'd get changed, pick up my bag and go out and referee my game. And then this is how my life evolved, that my life was totally taken up with football. So I did reflect an awful lot. And I was very fortunate enough last week to be at Windsor Castle and receive my OBE from the Princess Royal, who I was totally delighted with. My OBE was Services to Equality for Women in Sport, which I'm incredibly proud of, but she got it. And the conversation I had with her was all around equity and equality for women across sport. And she's an Olympian herself, so she understands what this looks and feels like. So it was still a total privilege. I'm still totally in shock, but I'm sure I'll get used to it at some point.
Mirka, first of all, thank you for coming, because this is quite intimidating. You've flown in from Prague, you're speaking in a second language. Can we get rid of our English reserve and give her a warm round of applause? Thank you. I did explain, this is very much like a wedding, it's a room full of love, but I couldn't talk in a second language anyway, Mirka. For you, in the Czech Republic, how hard has it been for your journey and the progress of women's football?
Well, I would like to say at the beginning I was really, really lucky, because basically I finished high school and I got this amazing opportunity to start to work for Slavia, even if it was just like, let's see if it works or not, and you will be the assistant and you will start to, you know, actually your work journey, because I didn't work before. And then, and then somehow I really was lucky with all the people around me, all the men actually that were in the club. They always supported me. They always give me more and more responsibilities, which was great. And I had I have a great memories of being part of the operation for all the UEFA matches that we had at Slavia, both with the men and with the women. And obviously, my way to the women's game was quite easy, because I started to work within the club. And to be honest, I didn't even know that we have the women's team. Like, I knew we have it, but I didn't know anything about it. And then my really, really good friend, Blanca, she's actually now the coach of our under 23. She started to work for the club as well. She was captain of the women's team, but obviously she needed another job. And she said, just come along to watch the games. And I can honestly say from the day one, I loved the game, I loved the environment, I loved the passion of the girls. They were kind of like heroes to me, because they were like working from 8 to 5, then they went to the session and all around all the week. And they were actually the national team players. So this was something that I really, really admired, and I wanted to be part of it and help them to grow.
When you're bringing change, it really helps to give firm examples of countries that are bringing change or systems that are working. You were part of the Women in Football Barclays leadership program. How did it help you?
So much. Actually, I did the course during the COVID, and it was also like the first month when I moved to England, actually. Because my partner, she's a professional football player, so I moved with her to London. And I did the course, and it was funny because I always wanted to do it, never did it before, and then it was just online. So I was kind of sad, like, okay, it's just online. But at the end of the day, it was amazing. I was so inspired, obviously, by the directors of the Women in Football, but also the other participants of the course. And it actually helped me to start the women's football section in the agency that I worked before. So it really encouraged me to go to my boss to present him my idea, and he went for it. So it was amazing.
Wow. Women in football, and we all, for those of us that remembered when it started and there were 10 people, that is such a tribute that this organisation is changing women's football landscapes across the world. Lola, your chance meeting at a networking event changed your life. You played football as a kid and loved it, but then became a lawyer because you wanted to make your life really easy. But something changed at a networking event like this. You met someone and it changed everything.
Yeah, and I've shared the story several times, but it was a chance meeting with Rachel Yankee in Canary Wharf, where I was working in an investment bank, and I had just a brief interaction with her. She was looking lost, no one knew who she was, and I was absolutely fangirling, and remember just beelining for her and being like, hi Rachel, and she wanted directions, and I was keen enough to take her, and we were in a lift, and I remember just asking, do you think I can still make it in this game? Is this something that I always wanted to be in football but didn't know how, and at that stage it wasn't as progressive as it is now. And she just said, I think you can do it if you believe in yourself. Anything is possible. And with that, I quit my job at that very moment and decided to.
That day, right?
Yeah, it was that day in that moment, and I remember feeling liberated actually. And worried at the same time. But I genuinely believed that, if Rachel Yankee could tell me I could do it, then nobody could tell me otherwise. And so I did. I quit my job, and the next few years was a transitional period into de-lawyering and coaching, and ended up, just traveling the world, coaching in different countries, and landing myself at a job at Burnley Football Club. So it's been a whirlwind of a journey, but one that I'm really grateful for.
Landing, she went to become a coach at Arsenal and then travelled and coached in how many continents around the world?
A few, yeah. Spent some time in China, lived there for 3 years, coached in Mozambique, lived there for 6 months, and was in South Africa for a year, and Australia as well, and India. So been really lucky to be able to combine football, travel, and meeting just the most incredible people around the globe.
What gave you the confidence to quit your job on that day?
Rachel Yankee. I mean, there's, and we've heard a lot about it, about confidence and imposter syndrome and all of these things. And I've just got to a point in my life where if I fail, it's not, I don't perceive that as a failure, right? So if I don't take the opportunity, I think that's worse. And so for me, being a lawyer was a good B plan. Let's face it, if I failed, I'd go back to law and it wasn't going to be the end of the world. And I appreciate that's not everybody's situation, but I think there's a lot to say for just taking that first step in the dark and finding that there is a complete staircase for you to climb.
Kirsty, you're a prime example of what excites you, should guide you. You didn't plan to be a referee. What led to it?
Yeah, not a chance. Be a child and think I want to be a referee when I'm older. When I was 6, I peaked at making the best decision of my life. My mum said, do you want to do ballet or brownies or whatever? And I said, Mum, can I go and play football, please? And just absolutely fell in love with it, dragged the whole family in, rainy days out on pitches, we all know what it's like. Absolutely loved playing and got to kind of county level. I was never going to go anywhere special. And then I went to university, did my master's degree, and I'd never thought about referees when I was playing. I never really bothered them. It was just someone there to make decisions. And for some reason, I did my dissertation on referees. And I think just the passion and the way they spoke about refereeing, and a couple of them said, why don't you take up the course? And I thought about it, and then I did, and genuinely haven't looked back since.
There's a lovely story about you saying one of the toughest moments you had was actually an under-16s match. We were just trying to remember it now, but can you explain why that was so tough?
Yeah, we were in Dover. It was a horrendously boggy pitch. In hindsight, probably shouldn't have been on, but it's under-16s, they want to play football. I think it was just one of those games where the teams didn't want to play football, and that always makes it hard on the referee because we're never going to make friends out there. The two coaches weren't best friends by any means, and I know my mum and dad were standing on the sidelines and were thinking, what has she let herself in for here? But thankfully came through the game okay. I think a few weeks later I got an apology from one of the managers via the county FA that said, look, I know we didn't quite behave in the right way, good luck for the future.
Did that nearly put you off?
No, I don't think so, because it was a game in isolation. I knew at that point I wanted to move on to bigger and better things and not be in Dover on a Sunday morning on a soggy pitch. So it was certainly a blip in terms of mindset, but I knew there were other places I wanted to go.
Now on the FIFA list, now like refereeing the biggest finals right here, and something we never see, I can't remember ever seeing it, strangely at a Southend Oxford City match, half time, and you got a standing ovation coming off the pitch. When did you realise it was for you, and how weird was that?
I didn't. I thought players must be 10 yards behind me. but it just kind of blew up on the internet. And then I thought, wow, that was for me. But I think it was, the proudest thing for me was my mum that was keeping an eye on it in Twitter of how many people, she was like 10,000 people, 20,000 people. And that for me, making her proud was more than the applause for me, if that makes sense.
Does that prove how far we've come, do you think?
Yeah, and as we all know, still so much to go. But yeah, I think for any of you that know Southend, it's a very hard place to go. If you're not doing well, they're on your back. So yes, to get that applause was a great moment of recognition.
Now an honorary Mighty Shrimper. We were just talking about it briefly, the importance of network. Is every single person comfortable in this room networking here? All good with it? Yeah, didn't think so. There are some, but it's generally a no. And we started talking about this. You really got your moment by networking. What do you think the key elements are on an event like this? If you're here tomorrow, what you can do if you see your person across the room and they're intimidating, first of all, that.
Smile. I think that's one of the best ways to kind of just kind of desensitize a situation. Just smile and make eye contact and say hello. And you'll know in 5 minutes if that person wants to say hello back or doesn't, and then you've not lost anything out other than your time. I can't stress enough the importance of networking and having people in your backroom team, so to speak. If we're going to continue with the analogy of football, there are probably 1,000 people that you can get in contact just because you said hi to one person, and that snowboards. And I think making sure that if you are going to an event that you've seen the list, and it sounds calculated, but you know who you're targeting, who do you need to speak to, and you're not wasting your time with people that aren't going to help you get to where you need to go. So you want to be a referee. Look at the list of referees that are attending and make sure you go and say hi and be like, look, I'd love to hear more about you. And I think naturally speaking, and I think on the general scale, a lot of people do like to talk about themselves. So always make sure when you are networking, you make the conversation about that person. And they'll talk to the cows come home and they'll feel good because you've made that situation. And so when they think about you, they'll think, oh, I remember that conversation, I felt good. And that's your opportunity to then make an ask. Can I be mentored by you? Can I come and see you in your place of work? Do you have people in your network that you can refer to me to help me on my journey? What advice do you have? And that's, I think, some of the tools that I've used and that's helped me to get to where I am.
Janie, I've forgotten the name of your consultancy. Sorry, you have so many lists. It's you, and you go and
Team You,
and
yeah.
you go and give brilliant outreach talks and set up structures, but also help people. What would you say to someone that hasn't got the confidence in a room to interrupt a conversation or to go and meet that person?
So hello? So when I started my consultancy 12 years ago, I made myself a promise that I would follow. Oh, that sounds horrid. Oh, that's better. That I would follow every single lead or opportunity that presented itself. Some of those would go nowhere, but it was really surprising where some of them took you. So I started my consultancy working around generic officiating across all sports, and now we do mainly gender leadership around the world for World Athletics. We work on strategies and structures for the ECB. We work around creating inclusive environments and embedding ED&I into organisations. So I think the most important thing is be courageous. And I think, as Lola said, the worst that can happen is they don't want to talk to you, or they don't answer your email. Tough, you haven't wasted much time. But on that moment that they do come back to you, it could open massive doors, and those doors open further doors. So never be afraid. Never be afraid to create your own opportunities, because people often say about recognizing opportunities, but I think it's more important that you create those opportunities.
And we were having a conversation, and I said I would hope that we get to a point that women don't have to say in terms of misogyny and sexism, put your shoulders up, back, chin up, smile. And you said, actually, you need that.
You do need that. One of the first things that I learnt as a referee was how to shake hands. Because what I didn't want is any male, because Kirsty knows our world is still very male-dominated, I didn't want any man to shake my hand and feel it was a wet lettuce. You know, I wanted them to feel my strength through that handshake. And you'll notice that I look you all in the eye even now, sat here. When I'm delivering, I do the same. Have the confidence to look people in the eye. I go and give awards out to children in schools, and they sort of come up like this. I said, no, you're not getting your award until you look me in the eye. And then they do. And it is that shoulders back, your chest out, look them in the eye. You could be bricking it inside. That's a technical term, by the way. But don't let that show, because once your shoulders are back, your chest is out, look them in the eye, you're controlling the situation.
Rebecca, you've also, Kirsty, you've also had to learn a lot about how you communicate with different players, how to get the best out of them, how to keep your cool when they're losing theirs, or to calm them down. Can you give us any tips on how you manage different characters?
I think exactly that. I learned from a very, probably Sunday league, how to learn to speak to people differently. I remember one game in particular was a really, really tough Sunday league team. They thought they were amazing, they weren't, really big egos. And I thought, oh, this is going to be a tough game. And I tried to get through the game by just ignoring the players. And one player said to me, this will not work. If you don't speak to us, this will not work. And I went away from the game thinking, annoyingly, he was right. So I think it's just learning. Some people just need to be spoken to by body language. Like sometimes a player will ask me, ref, what about that? And all I need to go is, and they turn away. What does that mean? I don't know. Some other players just need a no, not for me. And then some players won't give up until they get an answer. So I think it's in that split second, right, what do you need from me? Because all I want you to do basically is go away so I can get on with the game. But what do you need from me in that moment so that we can be on a level, because I also might need you on my side at some point. So thousands of different scenarios on how to read different people and respond to them.
Make it win-win, somehow find that middle ground.
Yeah.
And I just called you Rebecca because I was thinking of Rebecca Welsh. She has now officiated a Premier League game at Craven Cottage, but we've had that at the World Cup, we've had that at European tournaments. Why do you think so few women are coming through, and why is it taking so long to get to where we are?
I think it goes back to the old women's football was banned for 50 years. So we are so many years behind. But I think give us time, look where the women's game, the players is going. Us as referees, at this moment in time, we're getting so much support from the PGMOL. Psychologists, nutritionists, physios, data analysts. My coach is an ex-Premier League referee. So I think the support that we have just enables us to kind of go on that trajectory as well, which is amazing to be a part of.
And how do you cope with those days when it doesn't all go to plan?
Sometimes not so well. I give my mum a ring and say help. But like players make mistakes, I'm human, I'll always make mistakes. I don't want to, but I will. I think it's just how we learn from it, process it. Why did I get that wrong? How can I make sure that doesn't happen again? And just making sure I believe in myself that the next time I step out on that pitch, if I've made a mistake in the last game, I do my best to make sure I don't make another mistake.
Mirka, for you, in terms of going into boardrooms where there still aren't enough women, and we're still there, but what's been the greatest lesson you've learned from that?
Actually, yeah, what did you said is really, really important. I think we already discussed it on the call that, yeah, you can then sit in the corner and cry back home, but not in front of them. But yeah, I feel like in our country, in our culture, we are still like, let's say, 10, maybe 20 years behind you guys. So it's usually just me in the room, and we talk about it with one of the girls that approached me earlier when we discussed the misogyny, sexism, and stuff like that. And I said, you know, throughout the years, I just got along with it. You know what I mean? Like, okay, they make jokes, so I will make another joke back, which wasn't really like a best thing to do. And I feel it was like the protection of myself. But when I, let's say, got to my 30s, I think it's not right. It's not like they cannot like talk to you like this. Obviously, not all of them. As I mentioned, I was lucky with my bosses and people around me. But yeah, I think you have to stay strong, not to show them that you are bothered about it. Maybe still make some kind of joke or get them back still can work. But I think that you can prove yourself by the work that you do.
Yeah.
So basically, if you deliver a good job, if you deliver a good project, if you present something that is really important for them as well, then they will slowly, really slowly, in our country maybe really, really slowly, they will stop these comments and stop everything around it. And I think that's for me, I always make a little bit of joke of it within our FA, because I tick 2 boxes. I'm a woman and I'm gay, so so they can tick those boxes and I'm safe. But yeah, I mean, you have to gain the respect by yourself. No one else will do that for you, and I think that's the most important thing.
And Janie, for setbacks, when things haven't gone your way, how do you not be too fatalistic about it and make sure you don't let it stop your progress and your growth? Because when you are still in an industry which is still too often not like this room, you can start wondering if the fight is worth it. And that will be a short period of time, but it's really important to remember it will be for a short period.
Yes, it's a short period of time, trust me, because I do the whole emotional curve, you know, but I come out really fighting the other end. So you can have a game where, Kirsty said earlier, it can be a really tough one. You come home, you open the back door, you throw the bag down, you think, that's it, I'm never doing that again. And something makes you pick that bag up and go out the next time and do it again. And I think also, I'm pretty stubborn. Not just am I stubborn, but I like to get a positive out of every negative. Otherwise, that negative starts to define you. And I won't ever let a negative define who I am, what I think about myself, what I believe in, or my values and my behavior in general. So I take a positive out of everything. And that is the way that I switch things. So by the time I've come out of that reflection and that thought process, I'm raring to go again. They're not going to beat me. They're not putting me down. And this is all the self-talk that I go through to make sure that by the time I hit the road again on a problem or in business or on a football field, I'm absolutely 100% me, who I need to be for that piece of work. That sounds really hard and tough, doesn't it?
No, it's nice. It's nice. Mirka, for you, you're at Burnley Football Club now. The owner is an American. Does that make selling the women's game easier to some traditional values here from where the game was banned for so long?
Yeah, I think he's American and he's a father of 3 girls. So I think I wouldn't I'd be doing him a disservice if I was to say that those were the reasons. I think he genuinely is invested in wanting to bring Burnley women's football team to the top flight of the women's game. It helps that he's seen the progress of what women's football can look like from the US, and he's very much into wanting to bring in that around the attendance records and around the quality of the game to Burnley. And he's empowered me to try and make those changes. And I think if anyone has followed Tier 3, where Burnley were prior to the takeover, was pretty much on the community side, and they did a great job. And we've now got to a point where we're vying to be a championship team, and I'm pretty certain that with or without me, his ambition is that Burnley will play at the WSL one day. So it absolutely helps to have someone who has that vision, who has that buy-in for the women's game, and helps me to make those decisions as well.
What were your big challenges on your journey into coaching and coming up through the coaching system?
I think there was a period where it was more along, was I good enough? Am I good enough? Can I do it? And I didn't have any, I knew I could do lawyering. I knew I could do that very well. I had no issues with that, but this was completely foreign. And we were just having a conversation. You know, growing up, I didn't even know or couldn't imagine that being a head of women's football was even a role. You either played or you coached. And so now we're in an industry and a time where there's so many roles available to women. And so I feel like you figure it out. I'd never been a head of women's football before, but I had to figure it out and quick. And I think with the right frameworks around you, it's been a tough journey, but it's been a really rewarding one. And I think if there is anyone in the room that's thinking about transitioning into ops or football operations, figure out what your strengths are and try and marry them up to the roles that are in football clubs, because at the moment everything is needed, from social media to marketing to ops to coaching to psych to well-being, every touch point, finance, law, there is always a touch point of football. So if you have that skill set and you want to be in football, it is the right time to do it.
There are young girls now that see themselves being CEOs. That was never taught to us. I mean, I'm a lot older than all of you, but yeah, it's a whole new realm. How much has women in football helped you move into that leadership role and up through coaching?
Yeah, I think it's been I just love events like this. I love the fact that I can look out and there are, I mean, I also admire and have a good time with men, but I love the fact that there's a unity around women. I think it's so powerful when women come together. I did the leadership course, and there are a few people in here that I did the leadership course with, people that I'm still in contact with, just building that rapport and network. And I think, again, I felt it was important to do as I was transitioning out of one career into another to feel a little bit more confident in my ability to do it. And I think that we've done an amazing job, and so I'm always going to be an advocate for the course, because I think it just helped me steady myself when I was trying to get into football.
Kirsty, you've refereed major finals now. What's it like coming out of the tunnel to do that? What are the skill sets you've taken from that? It's a cliche, but I know just pitch side reporting, it comes to cup final day, you've done your research, it's just a normal day pitch side, and suddenly the wind goes out of your lungs.
Yeah, there's a balance, I think, of taking in the occasion and, wow, I'm doing an FA Cup final at Wembley. But every single football match, I tell myself, and excuse me, it's still 22 idiots chasing a bag of air, and I'm the bigger idiot chasing them, trying to tell them. For me, I tried to put it into context that there's 22 players out there, and I just have to run around and make some decisions. But yeah, walking out of Wembley with the fireworks going off and the music, and you think, I did not think this opportunity was available to me when I started refereeing under 13s, under 14s, and here I am about to take control of this football match. And I think there's just moments throughout the game where you get a chance to look around and you think, I won't swear, but wow. Yeah, really, really incredible. Sometimes it just comes back to me and I think, I did that. I'm Kirsty and I did that. So yeah, really, really amazing experiences.
Everyone's hinted a little at imposter syndrome. Even you talking about your OBE for services to women's sport. Can you believe that? I mean, really. Janie, are there any good tips for that?
Tips for?
Imposter syndrome.
Yeah, you know what? Wipe it away, because most of it is unfounded. Most of it is just us not having the belief in our own ability. We're good at what we do, but as women, we're not good at praising ourselves for what we do. So it took me a lot of years to actually work out that I was good at my job. It's not blowing your own trumpet to say so. I worked in a team of men at the FA, the only woman, and trust me, I worked twice as hard as they did. Not because anybody said I had to, but because I felt I had to be accepted at the same level. And if I operated like half of those operated, I wouldn't be in a job. So now, I guess for me, it is all about have a belief in yourself, because if you don't believe in yourself, nobody else is going to. Have the confidence and the courage to just chase your goals. Partly imposter syndrome is a waste of energy.
And if it makes you feel better, if you want to be a writer or broadcaster here, you'll know Paul Hayward, who's one of our great football writers. He still thinks he's getting away with it. And I spoke to male journalists walking into press conference rooms when they were starting, and we were intimidated because we were the only women. They said every time I walk into a press conference room, and even I know half the journalists, I'm intimidated. So quite often we'll think, we're the woman, this is, but yeah, shoulders back, because men don't talk about it, but you talk to men about imposter syndrome and they have it in spades too. Mirka is getting over any imposter syndrome by talking in a second language in a foreign country, which sounds incredibly intimidating to me. But what advice would you give to people about exploring options abroad?
Definitely go for it. Every single opportunity that you will have, even if it's just for some short internship or volunteering or whatever you can do, I think is the great way how you can develop your skills, how you can get to know different cultures. Thanks to football, I think that we will all relate to that. You can meet so many interesting people all around the world just because football is something that unite us together. So yeah, that's definitely. I mean, well, I moved here for two reasons. One was job, and the other one was the personal life. But I never looked back, and I always like to come back here to England and to meet people that I had the opportunity to meet, thanks to the fact that I go for a challenge. So
do it. I want to talk to the whole panel now about the big lessons that they have learned in their career that they wish they had when they first started out. And Lola, I think you've got a very interesting view on taking up space.
Yeah, I think, and we discussed this earlier, but I think there is so much value in feeling and knowing that you can. And I think in some of the previous workshops that we had, we talked about that self-talk and that confidence and that knowing that we can. And for me as well, I for the longest time was a little bit skeptical around affirmations and around vision boards until I did one. And I was reflecting back on this in our call, and apart from one of the goals that I set, I achieved the vision goal that I set 4 years ago. And so for me, it's time to do a new one. And I think there's so much power in visualizing where you want to be and what you want to do, and then taking proactive steps to get there. And that might just be going to an event, or trying to get in touch with someone to help with a project you're working on, or I want to be the COO of X, Y, and Z, or a referee or a coach, or whatever that is. Define what your goals are and map out how you think you can get there. And I think that's half the battle won, when you're able to visualize and think about yourself in that process. And I always thought it was wishy-washy talk, or self-belief, self-talk, mirror talk. But actually, it is so powerful when you train your mind to believe as opposed to doubt. And that's the one piece of advice that I would give to anyone that thinks it's worth listening to, is to map that out, put it down, put it in writing, capitalize it however you visualize best, audio, record, and then start having proactive steps to reach that goal.
How do you do your visualization? Is it on a board? Or
yeah, so I buy like a big A4 piece of paper, I cut out magazine clips or quotes, and for the one that I did 4 years ago, it was I wanted to be in football, so I had a picture of a player and goals. I wanted to save a ton of money, so I had loads of like currency and different on that, and I wanted to get a bit more detached from social media and a bit more of a whole kind of eat, pray, love vibe in terms of myself. So yeah, I had all those things on there and was able to kind of prioritize that to get to where I am now. And like I said, it genuinely is now time to do another one. So I'm excited to see what the next 5 years look like for me.
What's the first thing on there? I'm going to hold you to it.
I'd like to be a CEO of an organisation, and I say that just because I've just said we should be vulnerable and share, but I do. I'd like to see myself doing that of a non-league club or an independent women's club. I'd love to set out the strategic direction and map that out and do that.
Look forward to seeing that happen. Kirsty, for you?
I think in the best way, being prepared to work hard.
Yeah.
my bread and butter now that I'm lucky enough that refereeing is my job is to train. And there's certainly some days where I don't feel like training. If the weather's horrible, if I've been traveling that day. But I know if I get in that gym and put my all in, I come out feeling a hell of a lot better for it. So I think as a youngster, knowing that if you work hard, you can get to where you want to get to. Yes, there's barriers and obstacles in the way, but there's ways around it that you can just smash through and appreciate your achievements.
Because we haven't even touched on what was your job before you became a referee and how did it help you take the abuse?
So I worked for the railway, and basically I was dressed as you are here and now, and I followed people that were buying short tickets. So they'd do this long of a journey and pay for this much. So I'd sit on the train with them, well, not with them, but near them, invariably get into London, stop them and say, can I see your ticket? And they'd come up with some kind of spiel, but I knew the real story and how long they'd been doing it for. I think the biggest catch was 35 grand. She'd been doing it for a good few years. I absolutely loved that job, and I miss it.
You are.
Yeah, you said it. Yeah, getting up at 5 a.m. being a referee was not the one. Sometimes being abroad when I was meant to be at work was not going to last forever. But I think, again, for me, it came down to communication. Some people were shouting and screaming. And in a professional way, I had to match that because that's the only language they knew. Whereas some people, hands up, I'm sorry. So it was the metaphorical arm around the shoulder, it's going to be okay kind of vibe. But yeah, really, really good job. I left to do an even better job.
Have you suggested that to the PGMOL as some kind of work experience? Future training out in the field. Mirka, for you, what's the big thing that you've learned on your incredible journey?
Patience, definitely. To be patient, because even now I want to push everyone to do it right here, right now. Obviously, in my best scenario, there will be already 50% of the board made up with women, and we will have, I don't know, our first league on TV every single weekend. And obviously, I would love to have it from the next season, but it's not going to work like that. So, and as we also have a conversation before, like there are some fights that you cannot really win. So you definitely have to accept that as well. So definitely, that's for me.
Take the battles, win the war.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard. Go back, cry, find another strategy. Janie.
Well, I think I'd just like to build on what Mirka said, that when I first came into football, particularly when I started working at the FA, I wanted to challenge everything that wasn't fair, everything that was wrong. I wanted to bang tables. And I realised really quickly, you can't do that. You have to really sit back and listen, be patient, and then you have to pick your battle, but you have to make sure that battle is strategic. It has to be the strategic question, the strategic point that is going to elevate your cause or your strategy further. It might upset a few on the way, but it's not going to upset as many as it would if you went barging in trying to save the world. So for me, I had to be really strategic. And I can remember when I was on a leadership course with the government, and my mentor said to me, think about what good question have you asked today? Now, behind that sits the fact that you've sat and listened. You've then really thought about what your one good question is going to be, and then you're very strategic as how you deliver that. And I think the other thing sometimes in a male-dominated world, they don't want to hear a woman's voice. So that's when if you think about your one good question, it means you're not going to be constantly talking. And in Sven-Goran Eriksson's office at the FA, when he was there, he had a sign. And it said, speak low, speak slow, and never say too much. And I've adopted that because I could talk for England, I could talk very fast, but I really had to learn to control myself, step back, think about that good question.
And I'm going to ask you to think about that question right now when I just wrap up, because I really want as many of you in this room to ask them in the last 5 minutes have we got? How long have we got? 5? 10, good, we got 10. Before though, I'm just going to give you my little one, which is because imposter syndrome and women are not good at applying for things until we know we can do it. If someone in the industry, your industry, tells you to apply for a job, says you should apply for a job, it's their reputation. They wouldn't say that, and they wouldn't ask you to or tell you to. Just do it, or I'm coming to get you. Questions from the audience, please. Black top at the back.
Hi, Catherine from Lola Agency. We touched on confidence and knowing your strength, Lola, you mentioned, and Janie on being confident. I think it's something that we learn through the years, but as a mum, my daughter is 10, and I'd like to know if you think that it's something we can taught them at a very young age, because imposter syndrome, we all have that and it should not happen. So I'm trying everything I can to coach my daughter every single day to be confident. But do you think it's part of the process to go through these experiences and build those frustrations with men in the sport industry? Because we all been through, and I'm still going through this now. Or do you think we can just train them? And Lola, I believe you work with an organization with girls, and we talk about women football, but there's a lot to do with girls football, right? And even on referee, I'm not sure if you have any schools for girls who want to become referees. I'm not sure because I'm not from football program. But is there anything existing for girls right now to become young women and not have to go through this?
Do you want me to start?
Do you want to start?
I will, because I have a daughter.
Yeah.
And my goodness, is she one strong, stroppy child. She's not a child, she's a woman. But I adopted this whole point right at an early age that I wished I'd learned when I was young to be confident about myself and to believe in myself. So for my daughter, and I have a son, but for my daughter, I made it really clear to her right from day one, whatever you want to do, you do it. And I'll channel you in the right directions. I won't squash it, but you do it. And then, if you make your mistakes, own them. Yeah. Take responsibility for them. And my girl does not have any imposter syndrome. She has total belief and confidence in herself. She's quieter than I am. She's a quieter confidence. And she's been my business manager for 11 years. So I've also seen her in the workplace. And I'm really proud that I instilled this in my daughter. For my son, it was different. I wanted my son to be a 21st century man. I do not want you to treat women badly. You learn to wash, you clean, you cook, you look after yourself, and you look after your woman. And so I brought both my children up with different values, but to make sure they were prepared for the life they were going to step into. I hope that's helpful.
I think the question is, can we teach them, or is it something that can be taught? Yeah, so I think it can be taught. I think it absolutely can be taught. And as you mentioned, I'm involved in a charity called Goals for Girls that uses football to empower girls in marginalised parts of the world. And we use the power of football to teach them about confidence, about education, about their value. And this is in regions of the world that isn't like the UK. We're working in India, where the large proportion of girls that are being married under the age of 13 is significantly higher than anywhere else in the world, right? So how do we get that conversation in a safe way to make that girl feel empowered, as opposed to putting her in danger by speaking out in a society that might not necessarily embrace it how we do? Can it be done? Yes. I think it starts with modelling behaviour. If you're saying that you're a mother, I'm not, but I would imagine that whatever your daughter is observing in the home, if she's spending that time with you, is imperative. So we have to model that behaviour. I'm an aunt, and I take that very seriously. And also, are we putting them in situations where they have to think and fight and flight? And I think sometimes there's a tendency to kind of model coddle girls differently to boys. Well, actually, my mother took the same approach. I've got one brother, and he was raised exactly the same, knows how to cook, clean, all of it, because my mother wasn't going to have anything different about it. So I think there is definitely ways that we can take our responsibility as women to empower the next generation. And I also think there are ways and strategies and organisations that do a great job of teaching those soft skills, and it is a skill. And so making sure that girls understand that they can, they will, and this is the pathway that they can follow.
Any more questions? One more. Yes.
I have a question. Actually, I want to see if my experience is your experience as well. I worked in environment, a men-dominated environment, and sometimes I was the only woman in the call, and I had to prove myself twice. So I've been always questioning it instead of not about my expertise. It's like, yeah, but why do you do that? Where does it come from? So I had to trace back, like give the history of my way to get there. So I wonder if that's something that you experience yourself as part of the men's world, or it's just certain category.
Yeah, if I can start.
Yeah.
Yes. Like, yeah, especially because I didn't play, I didn't coach. I'm not a referee, so how can I understand the game, right? So I'm just watching it for like 20 years now. So I believe that I can. So that's probably like my answer. I think, again, we will go back to the confidence. Sometimes you have to just take it how it is. But yeah, it's a long journey. It's still a long journey. Obviously, it depends in which area you are working. But in football, for me, in my country, I think that I will still face it for another 10 years. So I'm ready for it.
I bet Lola's got an answer to that.
Yeah,
Don't mean in a bad way. I just love her
I
confidence.
do. I think there's. I don't want to open another can of worms. I think.
Go on.
I don't believe in imposter syndrome.
Okay.
I don't believe. I think that this is a tool to make people feel like this. We don't talk about imposter syndrome really with men. It's a very women-dominated. And I'm not saying that I don't get into a job and think I can't do this, but I also don't want people to feel like they can hide behind this imposter syndrome as if it's a disease, right? So that's a separate conversation. But to your point, do I have people questioning my ability to do my job? Yes. Do I have people asking me if I know what I'm doing? Yes. Do I have people that want me to prove to them that I have the ability to match them in spaces? Absolutely. Can I? Yes. Will I? Yes. Do I? Yes. And that's because I'm good at my job. And I think everyone wants to be good at their job. You've got to be informed. And so I don't take those questions personally because I back myself to know that I can answer them, and I've got a plan, and I've got a direction, and my work speaks for itself. So it is, and I'm not trying to make it out like those type of comments don't hurt, because they do, but I also have to come forward and say, well, I appreciate that question. Here's the answer. Next question. And afterward, oh, wow, you're feeling a bit stupid that you're asking questions that I've got answers to. So I think that's been my experience, and I'm not saying it's everyone's, but we have to get to a point where we've got to be ready to make sure that we are prepared and able to articulate ourselves in those type of spaces.
What an absolute pleasure. Thank you. I hope you've all taken something from this. Thank you so much to you all. Quick show of hands in the room. Who's going to take up the Women Leadership course now?
Yay!
Take a pathway in football they were thinking of not taking?
Oh, we haven't done that good of a job.
We try. Thank you so much.
Thank you.